Alright guys, so this is the first patch I want to talk about. This is just a basic square. You're just basically cut out a basic square of metal. You're not doing anything to it. You just want to make sure you have a nice square and do a nice job at cutting it. You can either use a squaring shear or just regular snips. I like to, when you're figuring it out, either use a T-square or something like, you know, a speed square, just to get the piece nice and straight. So you do something like that, you know, you could draw your lines, spin it around, draw your lines, and boom, cut it out, and you're done. That's the first patch. When you're attaching this kind of patch, which goes with the rest of them, you want to make sure you start in one corner and work your way around when you're screwing it. Don't use too many screws. I see a lot of guys fill this thing up with like 15 screws. You don't need that. Something this size, just go with 4 screws, and always don't push down too hard and work your way around from one corner to the other. Don't jump around. What will happen is the metal will kind of bubble up, and as the metal, you know, if it bubbles, you basically have air leakage. Okay, this is the second patch. So this is basically if you have a bending bar or a small brake that you want to use. The reason why this patch is a little bit better than the first is because you have this 1/2-inch lip all the way around, and this kind of sucks in the patch when you're attaching it. It helps seal it up a little bit nicer. Alright, starting with the patch that we need a bending bar for. We already kind of went over the first patch. You just basically cut out a square piece of metal. That's if you don't have any bending bars or anything else like that to work with. You need at least a scribe. You need something like this, or I guess you could use a tape measure, but it makes it a lot more difficult. This is not very expensive and it saves you a ton of time. You need to pick up a scribe. I don't usually use, this is Durodyne, I thought it was Melco. I use the larger one in my shop. I use something like this, but you're not going to be able to, this was handmade. So for this patch, we want to start off by look for the 1/2-inch notch on here, and we just put a 1/2-inch scribe all the way down each of the 4 sides. Technically you don't even really need this scribe, but it just makes it easier to line up make sure your bending bar is on there all the way. And then what we're going to do now, since we have the 1/2-inch scribed all the way around, we're going to measure 1 inch, basically 1-inch squares in each one of the corners. Scribe the corners with 1-inch squares. So to do that, very basic, just run it over, bada bing, bada boom. That's it. Now we have our 1-inch boxes, the squares in the corners. Okay, so now we're going to cut this basically from tip to tip at each one of the corners. It's called biasing the corners. You're basically putting a little angle on each one of the corners. So you just grab your snips. I don't recommend anywhere else in life cutting corners, but I do when you're making a patch. Gotta cut some corners. So that's what you end up with. You need a bending bar. So basically most bending bars, I think this is Melco, you have a 1-inch and they give you 3/8 on this side. So pop your metal in. You see, it's really easy when you have a scribe line to see that it's straight. You just hold it tight against the table and give it a little kick up. give it a little kick up. Just keep rotating all the way around. Definitely due for a new bending bar. Yeah, it didn't even go in all the way over there. But that's it. That's the patch. One thing I gotta say about your bending bar, this thing is all beat up. You don't want to beat on this with a hammer or anything, because you ended up, it doesn't work real nice. I definitely have to pick up a new one. This thing is old. I think this is 15 years old, but it's all beat up. It's hard to get in the metal. So that's number 2. This is the 3rd patch. This patch looks a lot like the first, but I actually put a hem on all the outside 4 edges, and we miter the corners on it so none of the metal overlaps. This patch ends up being quite a bit more rigid. It's not as prone to kind of bending and bubbling up for air leaks. It's just a lot more of a professional job when you're done with it. Let me show you the back side of it. So as you can see, we have a 1/2 inch hem all the way around, and you see the corners are tightly mitered. This patch is a lot more rigid than the first 2 patches. It's just, you know, you do a much more professional job. You would need a halfway decent brake to do this, and then you would definitely need a scribe. So if you have a big 8-foot brake like this, this is really easy to do. A lot of brakes in sheet metal shops have this little lip on the brake is a 1/2 inch. If that is a 1/2 inch, you don't even need to pay attention to the scribe. You could just line it up to the edge of the brake. I know quite a few box and pan brakes also have a 1/2 inch edge on it, but they just don't clamp nearly as tight, so it's going to end up being off. If you have a box and pan brake, I recommend lining up this bar right here to your 1/2 inch mark as you're making the brake, like this, as you're making the bend. But with an 8-foot brake like this, you just line it up to the outside edge. Close it down, and then bring it all the way up to the top. Stick it in and close it down. You just want to go over that, keep doing it just like that. And that's it. So you see how our corners are mitered now? Everything came together. Now when you're installing this, once again, start in one corner, work your way around, and don't push down too hard. You don't need very many screws. This is a lot more rigid than a regular patch, you could see, and you're not going to get cut on it. Smooth edge all the way around. It's a nice patch. I use this all the time. This is the last patch. This patch, I use this to like a wrap around a piece of a duct. This is the most rigid patch you can make as far as what I do out of the 4. And you have a hem all the way around on all 4 sides, and then you have a 90-degree bend on the 2 opposing sides, which would wrap the duct a little bit. Let me show you the back side here. You see how you have your a 1/2 inch hem. This is also hemmed, so this is a nice smooth edge. You won't get cut on this. And this is folded up so that your duct would fit tight to here, and these two outside edges would wrap around the side of your duct. Same as the other 3 patches, you always want to, don't go crazy with the screws, and then start in one corner, don't push down too hard, and work your way around, and you'll have a nice seal on the whole thing. Here's our 4th patch. Once again, 1/2 inch scribed all the way around, and we biased our corners one by one so we have a nice fold on it. Now let me show you how to fold this up on the break. Here's our last patch. This is the one that wraps around the duct. You can see you have your 1/2 inch hangover here. We have a hem on this side, a hem on this side. Now our makeup is going to be 1 inch on this side, 1 inch on this side, and then 1/2 inch, 1/2 inch. So you would actually add, whatever side you have the wraparound, add 2 inches to that. So if it's a 6-inch patch, you have 8 inches on this side, and then 1/2 plus 1/2 would be 7 inches right here. So let me show you how this ends up. First thing we want to do is start off by putting a hem all the way around on all 4 sides. Now that we're back to this again, we want to, whichever side we want the hangover on, we want to basically fold this up a 1/2 inch on opposing sides now. Bring this up to a 90-degree angle. And line it up to the edge of where your fold was. And that would be a 1/2 inch. Once again, 90-degree angle. Here we go. Nice smooth edge. It's a very strong patch. Start in one corner, work your way around. Don't put too many screws, and don't push down too hard with your zip screws. And that's how you do it. Alright guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for sticking with it. I know this is a very basic video, but some people, hoping this could help somebody out there. Next video will be a little bit more involved, and we'll keep working our way up from there. Thanks a lot. See you next time.